This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
All right, everybody, welcome to the WWE Podcast. It is time for the Weekend Review. It is Sunday, June 11th, 2023, as Money in the Bank looms just, a couple weeks? 3 weeks? 3 weeks, about 3 weeks. Yeah, less than 3 weeks if you want to be technical. 2 weeks and 6 days from now, we will be coming to you live, or WWE will be, from London in the O2 Arena, as Money in the Bank will be taking place, again, in just under 3 weeks. So, a lot of things happening this week in WWE with Money in the Bank qualifiers going crazy. We had 4 of them on SmackDown, I think 2 on Raw. So with the field is just about filled for both the men and the women's. And official predictions won't come, of course, until the week of the event. But the field is nearly finished, and some surprise entrants, some that you expected to be there, some front runners that are no longer apparently front runners, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I actually put up a video of LA Knight and why I think he should be the one to win it and why he could win it. You can check that out. I actually posted it on Twitter, of all places. A lot of different shows have now decided to move their platform to Twitter for one reason or another. And I'm not saying we're moving to Twitter exclusively, but I'm saying that that's going to be a platform we use a little bit more often than not for our posting of videos or comments on things going on in WWE. So if you want to follow us, you can do that at wrestling_audio. Our display name is the WWE Podcast, however, so you can still find us if you search for that. But let's introduce some new patrons of the show. They are Domenico and Neely. So Domenico, I'll say Domenico, and Neely, welcome to the WWE Podcast family, my friends. Hope you enjoy it and all the perks that come with it, including Discord servers and little private chat areas and exclusive audio and ad-free everything. So welcome to the show. And also, if you want to join them and many others, head on over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast for everything ad-free, which you can find also on WWEpodcast.com. Our merch is WWEpodcastshop.com if you want a t-shirt or a mug or something else. Or you can head to Apple Podcasts, and there's also a link there to go ad-free right in Apple Podcasts. So, all right, let's do it, guys. Let's talk about this week in WWE. And I'm going to start right with topic number 1, Exhibit A. And that is Jimmy, Jay, Roman, Paul, Solo, Sami Zayn still having a say in what's going on and everything else. So that'll be the first thing I talk about here. But even a larger topic that I'm going to discuss in the show is, boy, you can make many episodes about this, is the absolute confusion going on with just the WWE title scene in general. And I'm not talking about who's holding them necessarily. I'm talking about how they're presenting the championships, which is extremely confusing. How lineages are going to be tracked now with new championships being introduced, but apparently they're dissolving old ones, but then people come back and challenge for the old ones. It's getting insane and bizarre. So we have a bit of a segment coming in later in the show. I'll dive deep into that, and maybe Anthony DeMarco and myself tomorrow night will cover all of the just insanity of and really unnecessarily complicated introductions of these new championships into WWE, including Seth's world title, Roman's title, Asuka's title, but yet there's still another WWE women's title. The NXT title and the women's title, tag team titles are being merged. Guys, it's insane. What the hell is going on? We'll get to that in a little bit later in the show, but I want to start with Jimmy and Jay and the whole bloodline thing, which continues to week after week deliver. And here's the thing. I know a lot of people, not a lot, there's a segment of people out there that are tired of this story. Some even smaller segment have believe that it's been a bad story. I think the majority of fans don't, though. I think most of us recognize how good this has been and for so damn long. This is a rarity, one that in our lifetimes we may not see again of this caliber and length. So enjoy it while it's here. And if you don't like it, well, then time is on your side, because every second that passes is a second closer to this whole thing being over. But I think the majority of us do enjoy it by and large. Has the storyline been perfect? No. But the acting generally has been superb. It's just perfect episodic TV writing is what this is. It doesn't contain a ton of wrestling, which generally is something that I am opposed to. Generally, I am a big proponent of adding more wrestling to a wrestling show. However, when you come across a story like this that is told so well and the acting is above what you expect it to be for wrestlers, then you are interested, you're invested. And this is what we've run into with this Bloodline storyline. Most people are invested in this because the acting, and to credit the writing team or whoever is doing this, credit to them. I don't even care if Vince McMahon's behind this. Even I would give him credit. Whoever it is or whatever team is behind this, they all deserve the credit because this has been superb. And it is, and you know what? If anyone's saying that they don't like it, well, ratings bear it out. Last week's rating on SmackDown drew a record. I think it was like a 2.5. Which is, a massive increase for Roman's 1,000 days. And if you go minute by minute, you can drill down even further to show that when Roman and the Bloodline are on TV, that the ratings go up. So, there is that segment that doesn't like this story and think it has gone on too long. But I just, the ratings, unfortunately, are not going to be on your side if you're looking for evidence to support your hatred for this. However, again, I just wanted to give credit where it's due for whoever is behind this. I'm going to imagine there's a team of people. So this week, though, as we talk about this week in WWE, we had Jay not yet decide where he's going to land. And that's okay. I know that the story going into the show was Jay will make his decision. We'll find out where Jay stands. And ultimately, did we get that? No, we didn't. But I don't care. I'm not all for false advertising and telling us something and then not delivering. But in reality, if you're telling us we'll get a decision and then we don't, well, that's because we're supposed to believe also at the same time we're watching reality play out in front of our face. And while Jay was supposed to deliver a decision, he is now conflicted given the ending of his U.S. title match with Austin Theory. He basically shoved both people aside, and that's a understandable, believable ending where he was supposed to decide but didn't given the circumstances. It's not like saying a match is going to happen with the WWE and then WWE doesn't deliver the match. They've done that in the past. That's different. This was, I thought, a well-executed segment with Paul Heyman and Solo and Jey Uso, and Paul Heyman essentially trying to tell Jay everything he wants to hear, giving him their best shot to get Jay on their side, even though that Roman would never give up his power, and he would never make Jay the heir apparent, and that he's probably going to assign it to his children, and that Roman is essentially just telling Paul Heyman to give him everything he wants to hear, but ultimately, of course, we're not going to do this for Jay. And Jay seemed intrigued and that he'd be the next tribal chief, the heir apparent, the successor to Roman whenever that time may come, and trying to also, tempt him with private jets and all the perks that come with being the tribal chief. And this is just great storytelling. It's just great storytelling. And Jey Uso has been so damn good with his delivery and execution of all these said storylines and segments for the story, that it has really, really made a difference in how we perceive it as fans and how well it's come across. So, Jay, you're thinking to yourself as a fan at home, like, oh my God, maybe there are no more Usos. This is tempting as hell. How does Jay say no to that? But then Sammy gets in his ear and he talks about kind of the same things to Jay as he's been saying. And that the Roman will never give up his power and that you're being used, and they're like pretty much the same kind of thing, and that Paul Heyman will be in your ear, in your head. And Jay seemed to be maybe balanced back out by Sammy's little pep talk. And so you're still not sure what Jay's going to do. Well, you get out to the U.S. title match with Austin Theory. And Austin Theory, I know he's been kind of lost in the sauce since WrestleMania, but at least he is reminding us he beat John Cena. How he beat him, of course, is ridiculous. But he is trying to lean on that victory. That's a good thing. That's what you want to do for a major star, maybe one of the biggest, if not the biggest star in WWE history, arguably. And you're trying to lean on that victory with Austin Theory reminding us in a promo, I beat John Cena at WrestleMania. That's good. I like to hear that. You want to utilize that victory. Fans forget quickly. That's the whole point of the beating John Cena at WrestleMania, was to be able to use it to springboard your career. So, Austin Theory, again, he's felt really just kind of bland. He's a decent heel, but he doesn't have anything beyond surface level. You know what I mean? And when I don't mean that disrespectfully. I would still keep him U.S. champion. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying to fire him or anything like that. I just think that there's more to tap into than what we've seen. And he's just kind of he's a good, smooth talker. He's butter on the microphone. He's really good in the ring. He looks the part. He is a U.S. champion. That's all wonderful. It's just like we're missing the thing that we can sink our teeth into to really grab onto his fans and have Austin Theory be elevated to that next level. And it's just kind of like he's been living at this base level for a while. And his promos have been good. It's not the problem. He can talk. He can wrestle. He looks it, as I've said. It's just like something's not there. I'm not saying to turn him babyface. Not at all. But there needs to be something additional added to him. And I don't know what that is. Is it him turning vicious? Is it him changing his music? Is it him changing his outfit? Is it? I'm not sure. Maybe all of the above. And I'm not saying a 180 either. Just there needs to be kind of a shakeup, just like with Bianca. And we saw a little bit of that with Bianca, by the way, this week. I'll get to that. But ultimately, there just needs to be a small shakeup, a small repackaging of Austin Theory. Not a total reinvention, just another layer to who and what he is. Because as he stands, he's okay. Like when you see him, you're like, all right, it's the U.S. champion. It's Austin Theory. Like you don't turn away, but you're not exactly like, you don't feel a whole lot. Do you know what I mean? That means there's a lack of emotional investment. Something needs to change. I'm not, this is how I feel. I'm not speaking for everybody. However, being a wrestling fan for 25 years, you kind of usually know where fans stand. You can take the temperature pretty accurately among the other fellow fans. Anyway, the Austin Theory and Jey Uso match for the U.S. title was good. I thought that, in their 8-minute match, whatever it was, it was good. There's not much more to write home about other than that. But Solo Sikoa attacked Jey. And then Jimmy comes out and, Jimmy tried to even things out. And then Solo was going to spike Jimmy, and Jey stopped Solo from being from spiking Jimmy. And Solo shoved Jey away. And then Jimmy went to super kick Solo. However, Solo moved out of the way and he hit Jey, which allowed eventually Austin Theory to capitalize and retain the U.S. title. So then the dilemma with Jey is, well, Solo came out to attack me. Jimmy made the save, but then Jimmy hit me. Was it intentional? Was it not? I would imagine Jey knows it's not, but he's still frustrated with his brother. So Jey is conflicted and shoves them both away and just kind of walks up the ramp. And we still don't have a determination from Jey. We all know where this is going. Okay. Like the ultimate determination is, Jey is going to side with his brother, his true brother, right? His ride or die, as the kids say. Jimmy, there's no doubt about it. How they get there is going to be, a bit of a twist and turn ride, but they're milking this, guys. I want to have this set in with everybody. If you're frustrated sometimes with the pace of this story, this is not a story they're looking to rush through to get to the next thing. They realize that they are in the midst right now, the heart of one of their greatest storylines ever told. Whether you love it or hate it, it's just an objective fact. I don't know what to tell you if you hate this storyline. It is. It has been a success from every measurement, from ratings to crowd reaction to merchandise sold. I mean, everything. Okay. Match quality. You go down the line, every metric says this has been successful. So if you don't like it, that's just your prerogative, and that's okay. But my point on all that is, if you don't like it, well, the fact is you've got one of the greatest storylines ever told in WWE right now going. You're not going to rush to certain conclusions. You're not going to rush to the ending. This is truly episodic TV, where you get a little bit of piece of the puzzle, then you get the next chapter. Wow, I want to see what happens in the end. What does Jay eventually choose? We're being milked, guys. Okay, we are being drawn out. This is long. They're playing the long game here. This is also a safe way to do storytelling, where you don't just jump to a conclusion. All right, you have a great storyline, and you are giving baby pieces to it. You're giving us just enough to stay interested, but also enough to be satisfied for the week and being wanting to see that next piece of the puzzle, next chapter. And that's what they're doing with us right now. Whereas sometimes you just rush through storylines, things jump from one to the next. There's no, you go from chapter 1 to 5 and you're like, how did we get here? Where's chapter 2, 3, and 4? And they don't even tell us, right? That's not the case with this. We need to understand the pacing of this story is methodical. All right. It's like watching a great chain wrestling match at half the speed you're used to watching a wrestling match right now, which is wham, bam, flip, flop, fly, and finish, kick out, finish, match is over. No, this is like a wrestling clinic. If you don't like slower kind of true pro wrestling, like old school chain wrestling anyway, that's the best metaphor I can assert to this storyline. And so just kind of get used to the pace if you haven't already. So Jay's conflicted. We'll eventually learn, maybe next week with Roman back on SmackDown. We'll learn maybe a little bit more. I would imagine, though, that the ultimate decision by Jay will be known at Money in the Bank, because that is in the O2 Arena. It's a big stage. That's the next big chapter. It's not the end of the book by any means, but it's the next big crossroads. It's the next big thing for the Bloodline to present in that story. Where do his loyalties lie? So I would imagine, guys, we are not going to get a definitive explanation or conclusion or decision from Jay over the next 2 weeks until we get to London. I mean, why would they? Why would they give you the payoff now? Makes no sense. So that means that Roman is going to likely now, I would imagine, have a championship match against somebody at Money in the Bank, and probably that person will be known next week. It could be Bobby Lashley. We saw a Bobby Lashley promo this week on SmackDown. That he, is on SmackDown. If you didn't know, we haven't seen much from him, but perhaps he is the challenger for Roman Reigns at Money in the Bank. If there's not a tag team match with Roman and Solo versus the Usos, perhaps that's where they go. And then Jay ends up screwing Roman, or trying to, or screws him after the match and lays out Roman after the match. Maybe that's what happens, because obviously Roman's not losing the belt yet, I don't think. So again, guys, twists, turns, and slow methodical pacing is what this storyline is going to and has been presented to us. So, all right, let's move on to another topic here, and that topic is a little bit larger of a topic, as I promised earlier in the show, and that is this whole just championship mess that WWE has on their hands. This is a mess. All right, and again, I'll probably flesh this out with Anthony DeMarco tomorrow night on our show together. But this is a disaster. Well, I shouldn't say that. I want to say disaster, but until all the dust settles, it's hard to declare something a disaster. So I will say it's a impending disaster, but it's not yet one, because it's unnecessarily confusing. Let me start at the beginning. All right, you have the WWE and you had the Universal, and it's pretty clear, right? You had the WWE on Raw. You had the Universal on SmackDown, and you're like, okay, those are the top two champions on each show. Makes sense. Brand split. Cool. And then WrestleMania 38 comes along, and Vince says, this is going to be the biggest match in WrestleMania history, which is a bunch of nonsense. And it did not deliver. It was one of their worst matches that they've had together in their sequence. But no matter, it was meant to unify the championships. Roman won those championships and was proceeded to be called the undisputed WWE Universal Champion, right? So Roman then, even though the belts were unified over the next year, continued to hold 2 physical belts, even though it was considered one championship. It was unification. Now, my speculation as to why he held 2 belts instead of just one to represent a singular championship is that they like the visual of Roman holding 2 belts. It's like he's holding all the cards. He's the true champion. And for the year after WrestleMania, he was. After WrestleMania 38 to 39, he was the only top champion in the company for the men. He had no equal. There was nothing on Raw. Myself and others were extremely just dissatisfied with the fact that they could not put a world championship on Raw. There was nothing. And that they should have split the belt back to somebody on Raw, right? And they didn't. So we went without a champion or world champion on Raw for a long time. And I still don't think that was the right decision. That the fact that they neglected to put a champion on Raw, it was not the right call. Yes, in the absence of the World Championship, you absolutely had the elevation of the U.S. title, and that was awesome. But that's really the only benefit, because outside of that, it deprived guys of actual opportunities from pay-per-view to pay-per-view, not just WrestleMania, but every event in between. It really hurt the brand, and they're still recovering from it, but now Seth Rollins has a new championship. So, moving ahead, we then, after Brock Lesnar went away after WrestleMania 38, and Roman was champion for a year and no one else on Raw was champion, we finally get a Universal or a World Heavyweight Championship being introduced to Raw. Now, don't worry, WWE ignored completely the fact that there has been a World Heavyweight Championship in the past. They pretended to us and presented to us that it was just a brand new championship. There is no logic or good reason for this. If you're going to tell us championships matter, then you're also at the same time going to ignore the lineage of the belt that you're re-representing. Well, then that's a very contrasting way to present this championship to the public. It doesn't make any sense that they ignored and pretended that a World Heavyweight Championship didn't exist prior to Seth winning it. And it was ridiculous. I still think it's absolutely ridiculous. They could still remind us, but at this point, it seems like they're moving forward as if this World Heavyweight Championship has never existed. Now, true, from a physical perspective, that World Heavyweight Championship has never existed. They rebranded it a bit. They plopped a big WWE logo in the middle of it. It's a little smaller in size compared to the big gold one that was in WWE for the early to mid 2000s. True, all true. But just because the physical belt changes doesn't mean the meaning or the lineage does. We've seen evolutions of championship belts physically many, many dozens of times over WWE's history. From the Intercontinental to the US to the Tag Team, no one's exempt from that. Championship belts from a physical standpoint evolve. But the lineage remains, or at least it should have, and they just cut it off for some ridiculous reason. So Seth is awarded this, apparently, out of nowhere World Heavyweight Championship if we're playing their game. And fine. Seth has been a guy at the top of my card and others who we have felt deserves a top belt for a long time. So he has had a dry spell with a top belt for a long time. And it's nice to see. And he's one guy that can help add value to that belt. No questions. Okay, fine. But now we have Roman Reigns on SmackDown last week be introduced a new WWE World Heavyweight Undisputed Championship. So that means that now there are 3 belts that Roman's carrying, and there's also one belt that represents the 2. So let's go with the hopefully less confusing assumption that next week with Roman Reigns on SmackDown, Paul Heyman's not carrying those 2 quote-unquote retired belts with him to the ring. If he does, I mean, we'll have a chat, but let's cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay, so let's pretend Roman's coming out with just the one big gold belt. And by the way, this is not going to be a discussion about how the belt looks. I know there's a lot of conflicting feelings, or however you feel about a championship physically, how it physically looks is all surface level stuff. To me, it's what it means. What is it? What's behind it? What's the lineage behind it? Who held it? Why does it mean what it means? That kind of thing. I'm not so hung up on how it looks. We all have a quick moment or two of opinion, strong way, usually one way or the other, and then usually we move on. And that seems to be the case, hopefully, with Roman, and we'll see. But my point, though, is Roman has one belt. Okay, well, then is that carrying the lineage of the Universal or the WWE? So here's where things get messy. And, okay, so we don't know. So when Roman drops it, where does the lineage of the WWE start and stop? I mean, you'd imagine that the Universal and WWE are going to continue with their lineage, as that one belt is carrying the lineage of both. And at the same time, you could say, well, no, both are cut off because now it's just the Undisputed Championship. Well, which is it? It's never been explained. See, they don't explain it. They just are introducing these new championships, and they don't tell us what's going to happen with the old ones. I know some people don't care about this, or the lineage of belts, or is something that's boring to a lot of people. And I get it. If you're just a casual wrestling fan, well, odds are you aren't listening to podcasts, so that kind of weeds out people right away. But also, it's important because that's why the guys and gals are here. That's why we are told that they are here, is to compete for championships. So, okay, that's the Roman Reigns side of things, of the mess. Of how are they going to clean this up, or do they not even bother and just go, wow, the fans don't care, it's a new championship belt, he's the champion? Well, I think a lot of fans care, because it gets really unnecessarily confusing. Okay, now you move to the women's side of things, and it's no better. In fact, arguably it's a little worse, because you have this past week, wait, let me start. We had, for 6 weeks plus, Asuka, who's the Raw Women's Champion. She was drafted to SmackDown, but still for 6+ weeks carrying the Raw Championship on SmackDown. And we had Rhea Ripley, who's the SmackDown Women's Champion, carrying that championship on Raw. And no one was carrying or explaining anything. As we saw this past week with Adam Pearce and the Asuka segment on SmackDown, you would think that they would have cleared things up. And you would have thought, no problem. We did that because we knew the women were also getting a new championship belt, and we were presenting it to Asuka. So there's going to be a kind of ambiguity for 6 weeks, but it's all going to make sense. Well, no, it didn't. And here's why. Asuka was presented this new women's championship. We had Adam Pearce take the Raw Women's Championship from Asuka, and we had Asuka take the new championship from Adam Pearce. So it's no longer the Raw Women's Championship, it's just the WWE Women's Championship. Okay, so the Raw Women's Championship lineage has now been shot dead, according to how they've presented the storyline. And then to make it even worse, which is bizarre, this is where things go even more into the abyss. Charlotte Flair comes back. By the way, great to see Charlotte. I think that this is the most authentic version of her babyface character that we've seen. I have no issue with Charlotte being a babyface with how she's currently being presented. I still think she's better as a heel. But this is the best attempt that they've had thus far of making people cheer for Charlotte. Not having her there every week, being just very genuine. She doesn't have to smile all the time, that kind of thing. So it seems to be generally working. Fine. But the problem was that she challenged Asuka, but then pointed to the Raw Women's Championship. What? So let me get this straight. I mean, I can't imagine this is the case, but this is a big error if it's Charlotte doing, or WWE telling Charlotte to point to the Raw Women's Championship. How does that work? If that belt was just retired by the new one Adam Pearce introduced, well, then how the hell is Charlotte challenging for a belt that was quote unquote retired? How does that work? I mean, if that happens, things are going to go, from confusing to just insufferable and unnecessarily. See, the thing is, all of this is avoidable. You know how it's avoidable? You just should have had Asuka and Rhea swap belts. End of story. Like they've done in the past. Now, on the Raw side of things, we haven't been told yet, although maybe I missed it. But on the Raw side of things, I would imagine that this coming week on Raw, tomorrow night, we will have Rhea Ripley be introduced also with a new women's championship. Okay. So if they're doing that, and then the SmackDown Women's Championship is shot dead, that means that Rhea and Charlotte, or rather Rhea and Asuka, both have the same championship belts. I would imagine they're going to do the same thing with Rhea they did with Asuka on SmackDown on Raw with Rhea, right? You would think. Now, if they go that road, okay, so she's the women's champion on Raw, and we have Asuka, the women's champion on SmackDown. The Raw color-coded belt and the SmackDown color-coded belt are now defunct. Okay, so it's just a plain Jane women's championship on Raw and a plain Jane women's championship on SmackDown. Oh, okay, but then if that's the case, well, why not unify them? Because you guys are carrying the same championship. And if you're not, if you're telling us they're different, then why did you have to introduce a new one? You know what I mean? Like if they wanted it brand specific, why wouldn't they have unified them? You know, or like if they wanted it brand specific, keep the colors, because that is what that's what differentiates the women's championship on Raw from the women's championship on SmackDown. But if you want them the same and they're on opposing brands, why? To me, this seems to be like a unification, just a unification mission by the powers that be, Vince or Triple H. And it's messy. It's really messy. And then on the women's tag team side of things, don't worry, they didn't leave this out. The women's side of things, we had the NXT women's champions come out, and Alba Fire and, oh God, this is embarrassing, Isla Dawn. Did I get it right? Holy crap, out of memory. But then quickly they got confronted by Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey. Okay, so you're thinking, oh God, here we go. Here comes the unification. And that's exactly what happened. They also have a unified, I would imagine at the Money in the Bank event, they're going to have a women's tag title unification match. And so that means that there's going to be one tag team champion for the women's division as a company. Okay. But what about the men's side of things? I would imagine they're going to do the same thing. Is everyone just going to be wearing gold WWE belts? Like, just, that seems to be the way we're headed. But don't worry. They introduced a new championship with Seth. Right? Like, what? I just, like, they introduced a new championship to Seth, but then they also unified tag team champions with women. And they also gave the women solo competitors different belts, but likely the same ones. We'll find out on Raw if Rhea gets the same thing. Is this not confusing? Why is it this confusing? Somebody out there is probably going, it's not that confusing, idiot. Okay, then I'd love to have someone in just layman's terms explain to me exactly how this isn't confusing. Well, from a lineage standpoint, because I know that is what's to me the most important is, well, what do these championships mean now? Like, where do lineages start and stop? That does matter when it comes to value of belts. Anyway, like, I just don't know the end game here. I don't know the end game. This is weird, and it doesn't need to be. So I just have a headache trying to figure out what they're doing and the way they present them. But then a championship was retired by Asuka in place of the new belt, but then Charlotte wants the old belt. Like, what? What the hell is going on? Very bizarre, very confusing. And to me, this takes the focus away from what should matter, and that is the people involved in the matches, the investment of who you want to win and why. And if you don't even know what these championships are for, or what they represent, or who they came from, or the value of them anymore, because of how just messy they've made this championship, reintroduction and merging and unmerging, well, then you've kind of shot yourself in the foot and taken the focus away of what fans should be caring about. This shouldn't even be a thought. Right? Like, we shouldn't be having this conversation. We should just implicitly know what the belts mean, the lineages of them, and keep it very cut and dry and clean and easy peasy. And it's not. And that's a problem. That's why I'm spending so much time on this, is because it's a problem that could be easily been avoided. If they took the time to explain how and what and why things are the way they are, why they're merging, why they're not, where the lineages have gone, all that kind of thing. But they're not going to do that. You know that. It's just weird and it's chaotic. So, that said, I do want to move on here because it's important. All right, well, Baron Corbin was also on SmackDown, and he has a bit of a program with Carmelo Hayes. He ended up, of course, losing his Money in the Bank qualifier match, so he is not at Money in the Bank, and he will continue his program with Carmelo Hayes, which is, it's fine. Yeah, hey, Baron Corbin's doing something more relevant than being teamed with JBL and being called a modern day wrestling god, so that's a positive. Also, Santos Escobar took on Mustafa Ali in one of the 4 Money in the Bank qualifiers on SmackDown. What? I tweeted this out because it's important. When you tell people publicly you're going to quit if you don't win a match, and then you just pretend it didn't happen and stay with the company. Hey, Ali, aren't you supposed to be unemployed right now? Should you not be with WWE? You told us if you didn't win against Gunther at the event in Saudi Arabia that you're going to lose, or that if you lost, you're gone. You're going to quit. Well, where'd that go? Yeah. It was just a hot shot, clearly a hot shot. They weren't going to follow through. That's all that was, which is, I wouldn't do that too often. But Ali did lose here as Escobar beat him in about 9 minutes. All right. Let's see. We got Bayley taking on Michin in a Money in the Bank qualifier. Michin lost in about 3 minutes. So Bayley is part of the Money in the Bank briefcase match. That's good. All right. We got, let's see. Io Sky versus Shotzi in a Money in the Bank qualifier. This was also about 3 minutes and ended with Io Sky beating Shotzi. So no real surprise there. And what's interesting is that Bayley and Io Sky are both in the Money in the Bank qualifier. I think we all know where that's leading, which is cool. We all are ready for Damage Control to dissolve. We've been ready for about a year since they re-debuted at last year's SummerSlam, pretty much. All right. What else? Austin Theory, as I said, Jey Uso at the end of the end of the show, we already discussed. That was really the SmackDown side of things. I know I dive deep into that every week, but if you're ready for Monday Night Raw, I'll just do a quick review of Raw. And it was, let's see, match-wise, Becky Lynch versus Sonya Deville in a Money in the Bank qualifier where Becky Lynch beat Sonya in about 11 minutes. We had the Intercontinental Champion Gunther versus Kevin Owens in probably the match of the night. I mean, by far. And Gunther beat Kevin Owens in 17 minutes. This was a non-title match, but dang. I mean, there's much more of a program there to tell, and I think I'm here for it whenever they go back to it. There's no question about that. We got Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler versus Kaden Carter and Katana Chance in another non-title match. Really, really good match, or introduction to the main WWE audience for Kaden Carter and Katana Chance here, as they are just they are flip-flop and fly women's tag team, but there's not a whole lot of those out there, so that differentiates them. They're young, okay, a lot of years in front of them if they stay healthy, and they've got a certain energy from them, or to them. Now, would I deem them the life of the party? No. Bad name. Change it. That's about it. That's where I'd leave it. But we did have Ronda Rousey and Shayna beat Kaden Carter and Katana Chance, but it was very competitive. A good introduction for them to the main roster. So, all right. Shinsuke versus Ricochet. Shinsuke fought Ricochet. It was an apparent no contest in about 8 minutes because we had Bronson Reed put Ricochet down and then splash Nakamura. It was about essentially establishing Bronson Reed, and that's what it was here, and that's what it did, because no one's going to remember this actual match. It was all about Bronson Reed. Then we get Cody Rhodes and Mr. Suit wearer himself. We got him on the Miz TV segment, and it was fine. It was fine, and Cody was calling Miz Mike and talking about balls again, which is just, I mean, again, it feels so high school, doesn't it? I don't like the whole tiny balls thing. Like, how old are we? All right. But we did get a lot of Cody chants. Cody did get a massive reaction, and it was basically a reminder about Cody's open challenge to Brock. So that was good. Dom came out with Rhea Ripley, and that's what led to an eventual match, or will, I think, lead to an eventual match with Dom and Cody Rhodes, because Dom hit Cody and then hid behind Rhea. So that, I mean, they're doing such good work also with Dom and Rhea. It's brilliant. Zoe Stark versus Natalya in a Money in the Bank qualifier. Zoe Stark beat Natalya in about 4 minutes to qualify for the match. So, again, crowd was quiet during that one. The End of Sheer came out, and they attacked Cedric and Shelton. And that was pretty much it. Seth Rollins and Damian Priest for the World Heavyweight Championship main event of the show. You know, I was critical of the fact that Damian Priest was awarded this championship match because he was the first tweet at Rollins. Is that really where we're going to decide who and how people get championship matches now? Is who can tweet faster? I'm a Damian Priest fan. Let me just first and foremost say that. I've said it before, but he has such a commanding voice on the microphone. He's got a nice presence about him. He's not exactly a young buck, no pun intended, but he does have, some time, some experience to be gained in the ring, no doubt about it. But he's got still a decent amount of years left in front of him, and that means that you have time that otherwise older stars don't, which means you have more time to develop. And you have potentially more money to be made ultimately, right? So my point is that I was critical of it because Damian Priest has not won a match in about 3 months. He keeps losing big match after big match, and he's awarded a match because he's a quick tweeter, apparently. And the match was good, though. It's competitive. So I had no problem with the match here from a physical standpoint. Seth, of course, is going to make anyone look better, but Priest did his part. There were a couple of believable hope spots. That's all you can expect in these matches that are completely one-sided from an expectation standpoint. And Priest did hold up his own, and he nearly won the World Heavyweight Championship from Seth. And that's all you can ask for if you're looking for competition and excitement in a match that is otherwise, kind of a foregone conclusion. But Seth did win and made eye contact with Finn Balor at the end of that match, implying that is going to be his next real opponent, maybe at Money in the Bank. I mean, not maybe, probably. Seth and Finn have a lot of history that they can pull on. And I think those two, they're going to put on a banger of a match, but they're going to be able to deliver not just from an in-ring, but promo-wise. There's nothing wrong ever with putting Seth and Finn together. It's going to be a match made in heaven. So you're pretty much have a locked and loaded, ready to go main event for Money in the Bank there. Of course, Seth is going to win. I mean, we already know that, but still fun. And it's also going to be a side story of what was the tension there between Finn and Damian? Is there tension? That look that Finn gave Damian on Raw is being talked about a lot. Was that intentional? Was it not? Is there anything there? Is there not? So perhaps it also furthers that potential breakup of Finn or Damian from, depending on who they're going to turn babyface, from the Judgment Day. So, and again, I'm all for also with the Judgment Day, Cody and Dom. Really exciting, I think, an exciting matchup there. And I want Dom, I'll continue to protest this or to pitch it. Dom needs a championship. Please. Can Dom get a championship? Can we just create a new world title for Dom? I would accept it if it was just for Dom. I mean, him as a world champion. Imagine Dominic as a world champion right now. It'd be insane. I think if he gets a Money in the Bank, is a potential front runner for Money in the Bank. I know LA Knight, who I know was on SmackDown on the commentary table, was and continues to be entertaining and a fan favorite when he's not supposed to be, and he's caught on with fans when he's not supposed to, I think that Dom, if you're going to put him against LA Knight, is a better proponent to win the match than LA Knight is. Because Dominic, with that World Heavyweight Championship match at any time in his pocket, you know that slimy worm is going to do it at the most opportune time, and he'd be a perfect candidate to win that match. People would lose it, and he could shove it in everyone's face every week, and Rhea would be by his side. It would be brilliant. So I'm a big proponent of Dom actually winning that match if he gets in. I don't believe he's a part of the field yet, and that said, I hope Dominic gets into that match. All right, so that kind of does it here, guys, for the Money in the Bank, the weekend review wrap up here as we close it out. I want to thank everybody for listening, and you guys can catch us ad-free everywhere that ad-free podcasts are available, which means Apple Podcasts, which means patreon.com/WWE Podcast, or which you can go to WWEpodcast.com, and that allows you to go you go ad-free there too, and WWEpodcastshop.com for all your merch. So there's all my plugs to close the show. I appreciate everybody for listening. You can also give us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening to this show. So thanks everybody for listening. I'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow's Monday, so I'll be back tomorrow. Anthony and I usually record during Raw, so we aren't going to know what's going on during Raw, but our focus is going to be probably on the convoluted nature of the championships, and I'm sure he'll have some great insight on that. So check us out tomorrow night, but until then, take care. I'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.